Time now for Lions Central. Here's Brandon Alisaglu and Nick Kostora.
Lions Central Radio is back. Nick Kostora alongside Brandon Alisaglu. And Brandon, we have an actual preseason football game to get into here.
Oh, Lord have mercy. It is beautiful. It's been too long.
It sure has. And I think the best way to dive into this is let's go ahead and just give our gut reactions. Lions, Jets, what'd you think?
Oh, come on. What do you think I'm going to talk about? Dylan Gandy, baby. He looked beautiful.
Oh, he sure did. So did Devin Taylor. I can't think of anyone else worth mentioning from last night's game.
Oh, gosh. I think all of Scottsdale, Arizona heard when Ezekiel Ansah picked off that pass. I went nuts. I got jumped on every social network I have. And, of course, screen vindication based off of one preseason play. But let's be honest, that's all it takes for me at this point.
Well, after that play, is there room on the bandwagon for a couple more?
Oh, I've been dusting off seats all morning. I've been getting tweets. I believed you. I believed you. Yeah, sure. You know what actually struck me about that play, though, or just seeing him on the field for the first time really in Lions blue and silver there, is how big he is.
He's a massive human being.
Exactly. All you hear about is, and rightfully so, is how quick and fast and explosive. He's strong.
Yeah. He's not a slender figure. He is a big boy. He's cut good.
Yeah, it's exciting. Obviously, I received a text from a buddy yesterday, a listener, Ryan Maher, who texted me and asked if I was going to be watching the game in a candlelit bathtub. I said no. It was actually a bed with rose petals on it, but he was close. He was close. But honestly, that play showed that the big thing with him is that we're worried about his experience. Can he overcome his lack of recognition skills? I'd say that was a beautiful play where he recognized that he wasn't going to get to the quarterback, hung back, watched his eyes, and figured out it was a screen pass. I don't know if you saw the fullback fall down, and then obviously he made the play. It was phenomenal.
But he wasn't the only one making a phenomenal play there. The pressure actually came from C.J. Mosley, who is someone we have to be excited about because we didn't know how quickly he'd adjust to this defense, and he's already making plays.
Yeah, I love that pickup, but we got him. Obviously, grabbing as many Jaguars as you can isn't a solid strategy generally, but yeah, he's so far he's doing what we want him to do.
He is. It's we gotta temper it for a minute here because we've got a whole lot of Lions takeaways to get to. But first, we're gonna take a fun angle. We're gonna bring in our guest, our PFC fantasy insider here to go over a couple of Lions fantasy angles. So we're gonna go ahead and turn to that now.
Football fans, check out ProFootballCentral.com for all the latest NFL news and analysis. Also, check out the very popular Pro Football Central radio network for awesome NFL talk around the league. Go to ProFootballCentral.com. ProFootballCentral.com.
And now we're bringing in Jarrod Patterson, PFC Fantasy Insider. Jarrod, thanks so much for coming on the program.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Well, the first thing we want to get into with you here, we're going to hit you with some fantasy stuff, and obviously Calvin Johnson's the Lions' big fantasy weapon, but is he a first-round fantasy selection? Is he a top 5 guy? Where do you take Calvin Johnson in a fantasy draft?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of taking the receivers in the first round, but there's just no way to get around how good Megatron is. I mean, he puts the entire offense on a pedestal just by being on the field, and so you almost have to consider him with the running backs, the quarterbacks in the first round. And I really think he's the only guy in the league that you can do that for. So I actually rank him as a first-round draft pick, and he's the only receiver that I would consider in the first round. Probably not a top 5 selection, but he's definitely in the back half of the first round.
Right on. That's kind of, we wanted to hit on just a little bit of that broader topic of, say, draft auction strategy before we jumped into specific Lions. So that as far as how would you generally approach, let's say, just a regular snake draft, 10 teams, like a PPR? You would stay away from those wide receivers?
Generally, I would. They're, with the passing offenses the way they are in the NFL, you have, 2 or 3 receivers on every team that are going to put up statistics. And one of the teams that really frustrates fantasy fans is the Saints, because they're a high-powered offense. They're phenomenal with putting up yardage and scoring points. But you never know from week to week which receiver is going to be your big contributor. And so that's kind of the frustrating part that fantasy owners have with the wide receiver position. And coming back to Megatron, I mean, he's just one of the guys where, he gets force-fed the ball because he's open so often that he's in a whole different plane than everyone else. He's playing a different game, it seems. And so you kind of have to separate him from the rest of the pack because he's just so far above the rest of the competition.
Now, in relation to let's say the quarterbacks, where it seems after the top guys it gets clustered, does Matthew Stafford separate himself from anyone, or is he just a middle of the pack fantasy guy?
Well, I think that Stafford threw a lot of people off last year. His touchdowns were down a little bit, but he still put up an incredible amount of yardage. He's been right around every healthy season he's had the last few years. He's been right around that 5,000 passing yard mark, which is extremely difficult to do. And so if you go back 2 years ago and you look at his touchdown production, Matthew Stafford was a top 5 fantasy quarterback. He was amazing. The last season they had some struggles in the red zone, and I attribute a little bit of that to not getting the best production out of their running game. I think that a couple of years ago, even though they didn't necessarily rank all that high as far as rushing teams in the league, they were actually able to get a little bit better production out of their backfield. And I think that actually helped Stafford out quite a bit in the red zone. Bringing in Reggie Bush this season, Detroit should have that kind of production out of their backfield again with Reggie Bush and Mikel LaShore. And so I believe that Stafford actually kind of creeps back into the top 10 fantasy quarterback ranking. And he's actually, he's due for a very good season. And we noticed that Megatron, he only had, I think, 5 receiving touchdowns last year, but then he broke the yardage record as well. So it's kind of hard to get a grasp on which Detroit Lions we're going to see from the past 2 years. But with the added talent and the way they've been drafting, I tend to think that Jim Schwartz is going to get them back to that level they were at 2 years ago. And, I actually have Stafford ranked as a top 10 fantasy quarterback this year. I expect him to have a good rebound year.
Right on. We love hearing that, obviously. Read some stats, and I couldn't give you the specific numbers that back you up there as far as the number of times that a Detroit receiver was tackled within the 5-yard line last year. I mean, I think Megatron alone, it was something like 5 times. Add up those touchdowns, and you've got a different story. But if you were if you were to approach, just like last time when I was asking, what round would you look for Stafford? What would be that's where his value sits?
Well, to be honest with you, it's kind of a screwy year for the quarterbacks. We have a lot of the fantasy draft pundits around the nation that are actually saying you shouldn't even go after a quarterback till the 4th, 5th, 6th round because it's such a deep quarterback class for fantasy football. I personally don't believe in that. I think that most fantasy drafts are going to end up being fairly similar to the way they've been the last few years. You have, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees. Those guys are kind of the elite of the quarterbacks, and they should probably be first-round draft picks, regardless of, where you're going to put them in the first round. I guess that's a little bit debatable, but they should definitely be in the first round. And then you have a second tier of quarterbacks that, we have young guys like Andrew Luck, Robert Griffin, Russell Wilson, guys that should, produce like top 10 quarterbacks. And I kind of put Stafford in that group too. He's still a very young quarterback, though he has a great deal more experience than any of the guys I just mentioned. But he's still a very young guy. He wasn't drafted that long ago. He suffered through injuries the first couple of seasons. So, he just seems to be getting his pro legs under him, and he's really starting to develop into the guy that Detroit thought he was going to be all along when they took him with the first overall selection out of Georgia. And so I think that he's he's in that kind of a borderline year where he's either got to take that next big step, or Detroit needs to start looking to more weapons in the draft and to try to help him out a little bit better.
Jared, let me turn you here. You mentioned a couple minutes ago the Reggie Bush and Mikel Leshore backfield, but we've actually talked on this program about if Mikel Leshore is going to be that second guy. Does someone like Joique Bell or Mikel Leshore, who offers better value there as the Lions' second back?
Well, that's an excellent question. What does Joique Bell have to do to solidify a roster spot? The guy has actually been performing very well for as little known as he is around the league. He doesn't get a lot of love. But he performed very well, I thought, in the Lions' first preseason game. I think he totaled 45 yards on 3 or 4 touches. He's a very good receiver for a bigger back, which is something that Leshore has worked on. But I still would put Joique Bell ahead of him as far as a receiver out of the backfield. I think Leshore is a little bit grittier runner between the tackles. He's more of a short yardage guy. And so I'm sure that Jim Schwartz kind of has a bunch of different packages that he's going to utilize his running backs for the different packages. And I think Joique Bell has got a spot on this team where he's going to contribute. As far as what that spot is, I guess kind of remains to be seen. But Mikel Leshore, I believe he was a second-round draft pick a few years ago. He's very talented. I know he struggled a little bit with injuries also his first few years in the league, but he's a big, tough runner. He runs between the tackles well. He runs in short yardage situations well. If he could get his pass protection right and become a little bit more consistent with his receiving skills, then he could be a very good sleeper for fantasy football.
Oh, you're preaching to the choir there. We love them both, but we also, like you're saying, there's going to be all these different packages. There's a lot of different options on this team. How many Lions would you say are draft worthy at this point? Who would you be looking at?
Well, you have to obviously put Calvin Johnson at the top of the pack. The guy was arguably the best player in the National Football League last year, so you have to put him up there. He should be the first Detroit Lion taken in any fantasy draft. Next you have Matthew Stafford, who, as I said, I consider him a solid starting quarterback for fantasy football this year. Probably going to get taken anywhere from rounds 5 through 7. And then you have a couple of guys. Reggie Bush has performed very well in Miami. I think he's proved some of the naysayers wrong, that he's just a receiving talent or kind of a scat back. He proved that he can carry the workload in Miami, and he ran well between the tackles. He ran well in short yardage situations. If he can put the injury bug behind him, Reggie Bush could be a very good contributor, maybe a number 2 running back in fantasy football. Leshore and Joique Bell is going to be kind of interesting to see how those two play out. One of those guys could end up being a sleeper in fantasy football, but the guy that I expect to have a great year is Brandon Pettigrew, the tight end. He's a phenomenal receiving option. He's a very good inline blocker, should help out in the run game. And he's got, Tony Scheffler behind him to push him a little bit. And they also drafted Michael Williams out of Alabama, who's a very good blocking tight end, and could help Pettigrew kind of take that next step as a first-round talented tight end. So as far as fantasy goes, I think Pettigrew probably falls into that mid to late round conversation, but he's got a chance to vastly outperform his draft status.
Oh, I feel like we've been saying that every year with Brandon Pettigrew, so we're definitely hoping that you're right this time around, that Pettigrew is that finally going to break out of that slump. But let's get you out of here with this, Jarrod. You mentioned Reggie Bush. Is he capable of being running back 1 on a fantasy depth chart?
I actually believe he is. A couple of years ago when he was in Miami, he came over from the Saints, and a lot of people had a lot of negative things to say about Reggie Bush. But the fact of the matter is, if you go back and you look at the game tape, he ran very well in Miami. He changed systems to more of a run-first offense, and a lot of people had legitimate questions as to whether he could handle that workload, and he did. And he hasn't spent a whole lot of time injured over the last couple of years, which is a very positive sign. So, I believe that he has the potential to be a number 1 fantasy running back. It's going to be, a lot of questions on the offensive line that Detroit needs to sort out. And looking at the talent from top to bottom on their offensive line, this is the most comfortable I've felt about the Lions' offensive line in probably 4 or 5 years. They've got Riley Race at left tackle. Jason Fox is the other bookend tackle. And they brought in Larry Warford, who I think is going to be tremendous in helping the run game and getting an inside push. He's a big guy out of Kentucky. And he gets nasty when he run blocks. So I think that Reggie Bush could surprise a few people, and of course he always has the capability of catching passes out of the backfield. And you get him into open space, and he can make some things happen. He's a human highlight reel. So he could end up being that number one fantasy back. Maybe it takes a season for him to acclimate and get used to the Detroit Lions style of offense, but he's a professional. I expect that by the end of the season he's going to be performing rather well and maybe ahead of expectations.
Well, Jarrod, we really appreciate all this information. I'm going to have to go back and probably rewrite half my draft boards now because, well, I never know anything anyways. But we appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll talk to you again later this season.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. I'd love to come back anytime.
Football fans, check out the official t-shirt apparel shop for the Pro Football Central Radio Network. Check out bigfrog.com/Cincinnati. That's bigfrog.com/Cincinnati. You think it, we ink it. They have an awesome 24-hour turnaround time. You can also visit them at their fabulous store over at Anderson Town Center, 7426 Beachmont Avenue, Cincinnati, Ohio 45255. That's bigfrog.com/Cincinnati.
So we again want to thank Jarrod for coming on, and Brandon, he seems to be on that bandwagon for Brandon Pettigrew that I've been hoping people would jump onto this season.
He seemed more confident than most. Probably we've been hurt too much by Pettigrew to take that plunge, but he didn't have nearly as much hesitation as I do.
Well, Pettigrew also did not have any catches last night. That kind of brings us into how the first-string offense looked against the Jets. What were your impressions of our first-stringers?
Well, Calvin Johnson's Calvin Johnson.
Sure.
No surprise there. He catches the ball. There was that one miscommunication where it looked like Stafford went back shoulder when Calvin was thinking, let's go deep. But other than that, you know what I've really liked about it? Riley Rife. He looked good out there by himself on the left side. Granted, we're talking one preseason game against the New York Jets.
Yeah.
But I like what I saw so far.
Yeah, I did too. He was solid. I mean, I guess for the benchmark for the listeners that weren't really watching Riley Reiff every play is you didn't notice him because no one got by him. So yeah, Riley Reiff was definitely on his game last night. I also liked what I saw out of Reggie Bush. We only saw a couple of snaps from him. He was obviously the face that everyone wanted to see, and that hurdle was pretty fun to watch.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be a great GIF or GIF. I don't know the proper pronunciation of these things, but it'll be nice. It'll live on for a while. I wrote about this last night, actually, for Bleacher Report, that I love the way that he is running the ball with authority. It looks like he wants to run. Pretty sure you were saying the opposite, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think we had this debate, and I was on the other side. I thought Bush was going to be not running the ball at all, right?
Yeah. Mea culpa.
No, it's only one preseason game. I've got plenty of time to be wrong as the season wears on.
Well, but the thing is, it looked like he wanted to run the ball, and it looks like Scott Linehan wants to have him run the ball. That's it. While exciting, that also brings up the durability questions and the whole, should we be putting this square peg in a round hole and all that good stuff. But at least for one night, I've enjoyed it. I have to admit, I might actually be wrong.
Well, yeah, I'm going to temper my expectations there as well because it was only 3 carries for 5 yards, but I do want to see him go between the tackles. We also got to see LaShore and Bell go between the tackles. Any positive impressions between those two?
Not particularly out of the running game. I think I talked to you about it off air a little bit, but the feed I was watching kind of and it quit on me for a little bit, and I missed just a touch of an offensive drive there. But what I really liked was Joyke Bell is continuing his expansion of his offensive repertoire, splitting out, playing in the slot, and he had that beautiful juke move after he caught the ball. I mean, I'm ready for that video to come out anytime now. That'll be up on my Facebook ASAP.
I don't know what it is. I get more excited watching Joyke Bell get a handoff or catch a pass than I do when I see LaShore in the backfield. I don't feel like anything great is going to happen when we hand the ball to Mikel LaShore, and I hope I'm wrong on that, but something just, I don't know, it doesn't seem right when LaShore gets the ball. I'm just 4 yards maybe, and then we go to the next play.
Well, that could be being a slave to expectation, just because how can you not root for Joyke Bell? He's the the underdog and all that good stuff, and Mikel LaShore
and the local
was
boy
drafted and got arrested, so it doesn't sit well with us. Or it has that bad taste in your mouth already. Yeah,
maybe I guess I need to wash that out and be more objective. But so we also had, I guess, what the preseason's all about is the position battles, and there were plenty of them that got going last night. We know about Hilliard, Fox, Warford, and Gandy. I guess that is a battle. Whitehead, Palmer. You got Bell, LaShore. Let's phrase this way. Did anyone jump out and take a lead in a position battle last night?
Well, first off, I want to reclassify the Whitehead-Palmer battle. I'm not sure I'm going to call that a battle. I'd probably go with something more like a skirmish.
Sure.
Just based on the two players involved. But the only one that really stuck out to me out of that whole group was Warford. I liked the way that he's obviously a mauler anyways, but he was slipping to pick up. He would slip back to pick up blitzers. He seemed like he might know what he's doing out there.
And he's also in one of the weakest competitions because he's facing off against Dylan Gandy. So there's that too.
Well, fair enough.
I did not like what I saw out of Tahir Whitehead. I saw him slow in coverage. He looked slow-footed. He missed some tackles. I mean, I guess Ashley Palmer didn't really take a lead last night because he didn't do much of anything himself, but he didn't make the mistakes that I saw out of Whitehead. And again, granted, it's only the first preseason game, but he's already been in this offense or this defense. So I really didn't like seeing the mental mistakes and then the chirping on the field. There was a lot of that out of Whitehead as well. So I think he's someone to really keep a close eye on in the next couple of preseason games.
Yes, hopefully somebody will separate themselves, but the talent, we both know, and I think everybody knows, that the talent level at that position isn't what you would hope. You kind of hope that Whitehead takes that next step, but there really isn't a foundation for that belief at this time. As far as the right tackles, nothing stood out to me. I probably need to go back and look more at the reps and watch the tape to kind of get a feel for it, but that's actually a good sign as well. Like you were just saying, we didn't notice them, did you?
No, the only thing that I noticed was that Hilliard got more reps. So I thought they both were fine when they got their reps. I just noticed that Hilliard was on the field a lot more than Fox. So maybe that'll change in week 2. That's just how some teams do it. They alternate who gets the start in the preseason just to mix it up. The other position battle that kind of jumped at me was we got to see Havard Rugland on the field, and he looked pretty darn good.
The fans love him, don't they?
Oh, they went nuts. And it was like the fourth quarter. He's hitting a 50-yarder, and that place, I don't want to say exploded, but for how many people were there, it got loud.
Oh, yeah. At least 25 people were on their feet and roaring. But there was nothing to take. I don't really have a takeaway from that particular position battle because both guys went 2 for 2, I believe.
Oh, yeah, and they both hit long ones.
Yeah, for all your slamming of David Akers, you might owe him an apology after this preseason is over. I'm just going to put that out
absolutely. He had one good preseason game in a dome. I was completely wrong on David Akers.
Is that sarcasm?
I don't know. It could be. It's the radio. People can interpret it how they want. So let's look at the rookies from this matchup. I know we already had a little bit of a discussion about Ansah, but what did we think of everyone involved? We had Ansah, Devin Taylor, Darius Slay. What were your takeaways from these guys?
Nick,
I know.
You really think I'm done talking about Ansah?
Well, we already covered it, so I didn't know.
I've been chewing on fingernails, just waiting to get back to it. Oh, there's at least one more point I have to get to, though. Legitimately, my favorite play wasn't that pick 6. my favorite play was when he separated himself and shrugged off a block from DeBrickashaw Ferguson, who is a good left tackle in the league, and stuffed a running play. And then, at 1 or 2 yards or something like that, he was the lead guy in there. That's the type of play that we needed to see from him that shows that he's understanding the game. He's not just this physical freak who's going to, put tackles back on their heels. He's actually going to play the position of defensive end and do it well. That was what actually excited me the most about him.
So his technique, so pretty much just everything excited you about Ezekiel Ansah. There are no negatives to his performance thus far.
I don't know. His post-game interview needs some work. No, actually,
Well, he didn't have the glasses on from the draft, so he looked weird. But okay, what about Devin Taylor? Maybe Darius Slay. I liked what I saw out of Taylor again. I've been a big proponent of this guy, and he had a really nice strip sack of I think it was McElroy. So he did show up again. You only saw him for a play, which is what I got into. Is he kind of disappears at times, but when he shows up, there's a player in there somewhere.
So you're saying that it's a good thing that because he strip sacked a guy who's best known for an interview?
Well, he got through that one heck of a third string offensive line to do it. I think we got to give him credit for that.
No, he did make some good moves. Michael Shoddy had tweeted out that he did like the moves that he saw, but he's doing them too high.
Yeah.
And a good offensive tackle is going to put him on his butt.
Yeah. Well, it's hard not to play high when you're 6'8", though. He does need to get better at that.
Well, he's got a little time, I suppose. He's only 23 years old.
Yeah, that's it. But Darius Slay, I was not impressed with what I saw out of him or second-year Bill Bentley. I thought both of them, and well, I guess mainly the whole secondary, because Don Carey looked awful too. That's something we really need to talk about because the secondary was not good last night.
Well, you can leave GQ out of that.
Yeah, GQ can stay out. No worries there.
Yeah, he showed the anticipation. I mean, he very well maybe should or at least could have had another interception there, but he did get a little lit up by the intended target. I can't recall who it was for the Jets. But yeah, Slay did not look good. Don Carey was absolutely atrocious doing Lions things of missing tackles.
And no one better point out his sack either, because that was just a designed safety blitz. Anyone could have completed that. I'm just saying his coverage is what we're talking about, and it was awful.
Yeah, because, well, when you look at safeties, it's all about the sack numbers.
Exactly. I just know someone's going to comment, well, he had that really nice sack. Okay. His coverage, though, was just, ugh.
But if you were to look at Slay versus Bentley, which one disappointed you more?
I saw more bad plays out of Bentley. I think he stood out more for his negatives. I didn't like his press. I didn't like his coverage. I thought he just missed some assignments. His tackling was off. Slay didn't look good either. He gave up some yardage, but didn't you see more negatives out of Bentley last night?
Well, that's an astute observation. Definitely saw more negatives out of Bentley, the missed tackles, the just not being able to hang with people in coverage. And it also disappointed me more because I guess I give Slay just a touch of a pass. It's his first real NFL competition, right. And it's not even real. But Bentley, it's everything you had heard all summer. It was, Bentley's looking good. Bentley's looking good. He's going to be the nickel guy. And, as we were going to say over and over throughout this process, it is only one preseason game, but yikes. That's my official analysis.
There's still a lot of questions in the secondary. I think we all got caught up when we signed Quinn and we got Houston back, but there's a lot of things that need to be worked out here, and it starts on that side with Slay and Bentley and who's going to get that job because, well, through one preseason game, no one really defined that role.
I've got to bring a curveball at you real quick, actually.
No, please do.
I like doing this to you because then you have no idea what's coming.
Yeah.
But you know who actually impressed me kind of, and I almost hate to admit it.
Well, hold on.
This probably goes to that expectation
give me a hint.
thing.
Give me a hint. Is this defense or offense? I'm going to take a shot at this.
Neither.
Okay, special teams. Who stood out to you? I don't. What? Who stood out to you special teams wise?
Sam Martin.
Oh yeah, the punt. Yeah, no, I tweeted about that last night. That's why you draft a punter in the 5th round. No, he, he he really did. He had a couple of 54, 55 yarders. He was booting it.
And he was pinning them inside the 10-yard
Yeah.
line. He
really was.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, he really was. But you know what? You could have had that same punter, and you could have got him without a draft pick. I don't know if I'd mentioned that before, but I don't think anyone else was going to draft him.
Well, that I was gonna get it. It's that whole expectation versus objectivity type thing again.
Yeah.
Where I'm already biased against him because he took up a 5th round draft pick.
Right.
When obviously it's not his fault.
Yeah.
But he looked good, pinning the ball inside the 10. Great hang time. What was not to like? He did have, I believe, one poor punt, but I think that punting position battle that everybody's been going nuts about is probably over.
Who was going nuts about the punting position battle? I'm just curious.
Are you not even on Twitter and Facebook?
I
mean,
must have missed the Lions punter tweets. Yeah, no, I missed that hashtag. But Sam Martin, he makes us realize that Nick Harris really just was not that good for all the years that we had him. Now that we see a punter with an actual leg, this kid can kick. But he wasn't the only person that was impressive last night. There were others, and I think we actually really have to talk about how blessed we are to have the backup quarterback that we do, because Shaun Hill was fantastic.
Oh, he was great, and this is just... I take it for granted, I'll be honest. I don't even think about it anymore. Like, I know he's the best backup in the league, and I just expected him to come out there and do well. Although I'm not quite on board. A buddy of mine went to the game last night, and he texted me this morning telling me that he was listening to the radio, and obviously fans that call into the radio aren't always the most objective, but how they want to bench this particular guy wanted to bench Stafford and put in Shaun Hill.
Oh, come on.
I'm not going that far.
Well, but during the game last night, they were talking about during the Thursday night game, the Falcons and Bengals, they were breaking down the best backups in the league, and ESPN had Shaun Hill behind Kyle Orton and Matt Castle, and I don't see how that's even possible.
Well, I mean, Kyle Orton is a vanilla type guy or quarterback who won't lose you any games. I mean, he did get to start for a while, but we are talking about backup quarterbacks.
I know. I get that, but Shaun Hill, he could be a decent. I mean, he's been a decent starter before, and whenever we put him in, he's not someone that we have to like change the offense because he's in the game. He can compete.
Well, that's a ringing endorsement.
Well, it's for a backup. I mean, if you want to hear, I could really get into Kellen Moore and give you a real endorsement for a backup quarterback, but I'll save that.
I hope
did you actually watch long enough to see Kellen Moore throw the ball?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm gonna have to agree with every actual analyst out there, as opposed to the legions of apologists. Why is he in the NFL? And if he gets a roster spot, I might have to walk away from the Lions for at least 24, 30 minutes.
It's amazing to see how little arm strength this kid actually has. At Boise State, I don't know if they were just able to hide it or whatever, but he can't throw the ball an out route 5 yards down the field. It's just flutters.
Yeah, I think they might. I mean, I obviously haven't gone back and watched the tape, but
you don't need to.
Must have been a lot of slants. I mean, back in Boise State.
Oh, okay. So who else? Gosh, I didn't know I was going to get into Kellen Moore on this show, but who else was the disappointment for us? Did anyone else jump out as just awful for you last night?
What do you mean? We spent 20 minutes preparing Kellen Moore material. That's all we're going to talk about?
I know.
Well, for me, Theo Riddick didn't exactly bring his A game. Mm-hmm. That kid is going to need to fight pretty hard for a roster spot. I'm not really sure. Yeah, it's his first game too, and I should cut him the same slack I did Slay. But what did you see out of him?
I saw him drop an easy pass. He didn't look much like the dual threat weapon that we've been hearing about from him. I didn't see much of anything really. He was just kind of there. 4 carries, 12 yards. Okay, I mean, No, I didn't see enough from Theo Riddick to say, yeah, he'll definitely have a roster spot come the end of the preseason. That's for sure.
Yeah, but to a player who is trying to make a roster spot, what about Matt Willis? Where'd this kid come from?
We got to talk about Matt Willis. He had that catch in the end zone. That was a professional football player right there. I don't know what defender. He just went right around him, caught the ball behind the other guy's back, and then brought it back to himself. That was impressive. He looked really good all night.
Yeah, there was in the catch along the sideline, whether it was or wasn't, it was a nice grab. You have to like what you're seeing here. I didn't know a whole lot about him before that game. To be honest, I still don't know that much because, it's not like he was burning number one cornerbacks or anything. But I liked what I saw. He's an interesting story going forward at the minimum.
He is. We've gone into detail on this show before about what we thought about that receiver battle behind the top three of Johnson, Burleson, and Broyles, obviously, and we had never even talked about Matt Willis. I don't know. He's 29 years old. He's been in the league. Well, he's had 4 seasons, and he's never really done anything past. He had 18 catches one year for Denver or a little over 250 yards. So, I mean, this isn't a standout player or anything, but it was impressive what we saw last night. I definitely want to see more from him in the preseason because it'll be interesting to see if he can do anything else that jumps off the page for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing, like you said, first game and all that good stuff, but let's see what happens. I'm excited. Speaking of what happens, the next game for the Lions is Thursday night, taking on the Cleveland Browns. What are you looking for? What do you need to see? Or specifically, who are you looking to kind of take another step or maybe take a step back?
What I'm most intrigued to watch is I really want to see what happens with Bell and LaShore because somebody has to establish themselves as the definite number 2. And for me right now, I've seen so much more from Bell than I have LaShore. I want to see LaShore just stand out one game, just do something great. Make just a couple of really quality runs that make you remember why we drafted this kid. So that's I mean, there's other things that we're watching for, but for me, that's who I need to see step up is Mikel LaShore. It's a week 2 preseason game against the Cleveland Browns. Step your game up and show why you're going to beat Joique Bell for this job.
Well, and I think you're right on right there, and a lot of people agree with you on the interwebs. There's chatter of him not getting a roster spot.
Yeah, I've heard that.
That's kind of crazy for it's his 3rd year, right? Second round pick.
Yeah, it's his 3rd year, second healthy year, kind of.
Right, and he's a running back. His shelf life isn't that long, anyways. I can't believe I'm saying this, but we're getting close to a make or break, at least a make or break preseason. If he's lucky, regular season. I mean, granted, the second game isn't the one where everything goes down. That's the 3rd game. But, yeah, you're right on the money there. He needs to take a step forward. He needs to show some flashes. You know what would be nice? How about he rips off a 20-yard run?
Yeah, I think I've said before, his longest run last year was 16 yards. So, hey, just give me a 17-yard run just to show me you can do that. That's all I'm asking for.
Wow, you're pretty easy to please, dude.
17 yards. Come on, Mikel LaShore. You can do it.
Well, something else that I'm kind of going to be looking for, and correct me if I'm wrong, but did the Lions run the pistol last year? I don't remember seeing the pistol.
No, you're right about that. The pistol was not part of the Lions' offensive repertoire a year ago.
And I could be wrong, but I did see it last night. I only saw it with Sean Hill. Like I said, my feed went in and out a couple times early, but it's an interesting little wrinkle. I don't suspect that they're going to have either quarterback running the ball because, oh man, can you imagine the backlash if Stafford gets hurt on a designed run?
No, that's just there's no way they would even consider letting Matthew Stafford run the pistol. I'm with you. No.
But as far as players I need to see, well, first and foremost, Don Carey.
You want to see more Don Carey?
Well, it's one of those things where I don't think I have an option.
Yeah.
Ricardo Silva actually got claimed by somebody. I can't believe I'm talking about Ricardo Silva when he's gone. Did Chris Hope play at all last night?
I didn't see him. I didn't see him play at all.
And I don't think I saw him on the early scratch list or anything.
Oh, wait, Chris Hope, he's got a tackle. He made a tackle at some point.
Okay. Well, maybe he's
We
the guy
missed
I
him.
need to see more from, because I would love to see Dalmas back. I don't think that's going to happen. I also don't suspect that they're going to let Ryan Broyles play either. Those two are two guys I obviously would love to see.
Yeah.
But if one of the three guys, either Ron Bartell or Jonathan Green or Chris Greenwood, I need to see one of those guys on the field so that I don't have to feel so bad about Darius Slay and Bill Bentley. I need to see that there's going to be a competition.
Yeah, so you'll be tuning in to watch Ron Bartell and Don Carey take on the Cleveland Browns. How's that sit with you?
Ezekiel Ansah.
Yeah, no, for real, Ezekiel Ansah. So, okay, is there anyone else we want to see? I mean, there's still so many battles to watch in this preseason. I still really want to see Rugland win that job. I don't know. Let's see how he kicks outside of a dome. Then, hey, let's see how David Akers kicks outside of a dome too at some point. So yeah, there's still a lot to watch in this preseason. This is just some quick first game hits for you guys. That's all this is right now.
Yeah, and the actually maybe another great spot we need to see more of, because I liked what I saw, was the offensive line in general. That was a really interesting point by Jarrod about he feels the best about this offensive line.
Yeah, we didn't touch on that yet. That was interesting of him to say. He said he went as far as to say he feels comfortable with this offensive line.
Yeah, that's another first for me. Like another place where he has more faith than I do as far as the pedigree thing, and now the entire offensive line. I think that's been part of that's been the analysis all off season, is that this particular offensive line is more talented than the one that came before it, but the whole experience problem, or lack thereof. But as Ezekiel Ansah always proves, experience is sometimes overrated.
I don't know. We need to get a chart going and see your record for how many times you can shoehorn him into a single show, because it's getting up there.
Well, I'm trying to set up a whole gambling thing to bring back some, to give the reader or listeners something to really watch out for. Or maybe it's a drinking game.
Yeah, because you realize you were just commenting on the Fantasy Insider's insight on the offensive line, and you brought up Ezekiel Ansah. It's a talent of yours. It really is.
Oh, my mother hates it.
I mean,
she's trying to talk about my brother and what he's doing in college, and I somehow shoehorn Ansah into it. It's phenomenal.
All right, so what we're going to do now is our next show is going to come at you. We're going to record it next Tuesday night. That's the Tuesday after the Lions game against the Browns. So we'll tape it on Tuesday. We'll have it up for you guys by Wednesday, and we're going to give you all the insight and analysis from another Lions preseason game. Hopefully Brandon has plenty of Ron Bartell and Don Carey stories to tell us, because that's what he'll be breaking down. But yeah, so for that, gosh, wow, that's the end of our show for this week. Thanks for listening. For Brandon, I'm Nick. Thanks for tuning in to Lions Central Radio.
This has been a presentation of the Pro Football Central Network. For news, blogs, highlights, and more, log on to ProFootballCentral.com.